Stephen Craig Paddock was an American mass murderer responsible for the 2017 Las Vegas shooting in Paradise, Nevada, on October 1, 2017. Stephen Paddock was born in Clinton, Iowa, on April 9, 1953. He was the firstborn son of Benjamin Paddock and Dolores Hudson. His family moved from Clinton, Iowa to Tucson, Arizona, and eventually moved to Los Angeles, California. Stephen's father, Benjamin, was arrested when Stephen was 7 years old for robbing a bank in 1960. Benjamin was convicted, but escaped prison 9 years later in 1969, which earned him a spot on the FBI's most wanted list. Stephen Paddock attended Richard E. Byrd Middle School and Sun Valley High School, eventually graduating from John H. Francis Polytechnic High School in 1971. After this, Stephen graduated from California State University Northridge in 1977 with a degree in business administration. After college, Paddock worked for the U.S. Postal Service from 1975 to 1978, eventually transitioning to the Internal Revenue Service, where he worked as an agent until 1984. After that, Paddock briefly became an auditor for the Defense Contract Audit Agency in 1985. After that, he worked for a few years as an internal auditor for a company that would later become Lockheed Martin. He also dabbled in real estate with his brother Eric. As far as his personal life goes, Paddock was married twice and divorced twice. His first marriage was only a couple years, from 1977 to 1979, and round two for a bit longer, from 1985 to 1990. Even though they were divorced, family members say he stayed on good terms with both of his ex-wives. Paddock moved around, living in Texas to California to Florida, and he eventually came to rest in 2016, where he moved from Florida to a retirement home in Mesquite, Nevada. Paddock lived in Mesquite with his girlfriend, whom he had met several years before in Reno, Nevada. It was reported that he kept a low profile, keeping to himself, and he was also described by an acquaintance as being intelligent and methodical. Paddock was also a gambler. He played video poker for over 25 years. Paddock said he won money by using algorithms on gambling machines. And on top of that, Paddock also had a pilot's license and owned 2 small planes. This guy was a real estate investor, a property manager, an accountant, an amateur pilot, and a video poker gambler. Paddock's only recorded interactions with law enforcement was a minor traffic citation that happened years before the shooting, which he settled in court, and a lawsuit where he sued the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas over him being injured because he tripped over an obstruction on the floor. And that lawsuit was settled and dismissed in 2014. It was reported that he began to lose a lot of his money and experienced some depression. He was prescribed Valium. According to those that knew him, he did not talk about politics and did not belong to any political organizations. Paddock's gun purchases spiked significantly between October 2016 and September 2017. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Paddock purchased over 55 firearms. He also purchased several accessories for those firearms. And 2 days prior to the shooting, Paddock was recorded driving to an area for target practice located near his home. It was reported that Paddock spoke about conspiracies about FEMA and the Waco siege and Ruby Ridge standoff, and he was reported to say that FEMA's actions after Hurricane Katrina were a dry run for law enforcement and military to start kicking down doors and confiscating guns. Paddock checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Casino on September 25th, 6 days before the shooting. He brought with him 10 shooting range bags and a computer. 4 days later, he moved into an additional suite that was connected to his original room, and he stayed in both rooms. Over the course of his stay, he set up his weapons. He had 23 rifles and a handgun. He had 14 .223 caliber AR-15 type rifles, 8 .308 caliber AR-10 type rifles, 1 .308 caliber Ruger American bolt-action rifle, and his handgun was a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson Model 342 revolver. Not to mention the large quantity of ammunition along with high-capacity magazines that could hold up to 100 rounds each. Some of the rifles had bipods, which were equipped with telescopic sights. All 14 AR-15 type rifles were equipped with bump stocks. And he also set up a baby camera on a service cart outside his room to surveil the hallway. He locked himself in his room and screwed the door shut, and he waited. On October 1st, 2017, at 10:05 p.m., Stephen Paddock opened fire on the large crowd attending the Route 91 music festival. He fired hundreds of rounds at concert-goers. During the attack, a security guard named Jesus Campos approached Paddock's room, and seeing him on the baby camera, Paddock fired 35 rounds through his hotel door, and luckily, Jesus' wounds were not lethal. Paddock continued his onslaught for 10 minutes straight, and then the gunfire suddenly stopped at 10:15 p.m. He fired more than 1,000 rounds. Paddock fired his last shot when he put his revolver into his mouth and he pulled the trigger. Only 2 minutes later, the first two police officers reached the 32nd floor of the hotel at 10:17 p.m. Only a minute after that, they came upon Paddock's door. Between 10:26 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., 8 more Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers joined them and began clearing the suites on the 32nd floor. At 10:55 p.m., 8 SWAT team members arrived as well. And at 11:20 p.m., once all the other rooms on the floor had been cleared, the police breached his door with an explosive and entered the room. Paddock was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. On October 1st, 2017, Craig Paddock fired indiscriminately into a crowd of approximately 22,000 people attending a country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip. He killed 60 people and injured 867 more. 411 were wounded by gunfire. Paddock's motive remains officially undetermined, and this incident is the deadliest mass shooting by a lone shooter in United States history. During the subsequent investigation, a note was found that he had handwritten calculations about where he needed to aim to maximize accuracy, calculating the distance to the target, including his elevation and the bullet trajectory relative to the line of fire. Investigations also found laptops in the suite, one of which was missing a hard drive. Computer forensics discovered hundreds of images of CP on the laptops, and they searched his car and found ammonium nitrate, which is used to create explosive devices, in his trunk, not to mention the additional 1,600 rounds of ammunition and 50 pounds of tannerite. Tannerite is a binary explosive that's used to make explosive targets for gun ranges. Though investigators clarified that he did not appear to have assembled an explosive device. A search of Paddock's home turned up 19 more firearms. His motive remains unknown. Stanford University actually removed his brain and analyzed it and did not find any abnormalities. Investigators think that it was possible that he had bipolar disorder. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, the ISIL, tried to claim responsibility for the shooting, and they said that Paddock had converted to Islam 6 months prior to the attack. But United States law enforcement officials have no evidence of a connection between Paddock and ISIL. This is for informational purposes only. The people responsible and their actions should in no way be glorified. There are monsters among us. We must learn from our past and be preemptive. Regardless of motive, violence should always be a last resort as a method for inducing or provoking social change. Actions that lead to the taking of lives of innocent people are simply not justified.